Everything ready? Good morning and welcome to the October 22nd, 2019 Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting. This meeting is called to order. We'll go into closed session agenda.
Item 1, conference with labor negotiator. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, closed session with county designated labor negotiator Che Johnson regarding employee organization Service Employees International Union.
Is there any public comment regarding this item?
Yes, I'm a member of the public and I have comment. Really, I have nothing to say about this, but I like wasting your time. Regarding employee organization, Service Employees International Union. As you know, I'm a big supporter of unions. This is a service union and not a professional or what would be called a union that is specific to an occupation. So I treat this union a little bit differently than I treat those unions. This union had, in the past, tried to take over unions that I'd been associated with, and I never appreciated that. But they do have a place in our society, and they have a place in this county to an extent. I would like you to look favorably on them and favorably on your negotiator, Johnson. So this conference with labor negotiator, fantastic.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll move to item 2.
Item 2, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one case pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2.
Here's the dilly and dally on what's going to happen. I actually know what this is about, but because of the rules of the board, we're going to just talk about what I want to talk about. You have a CAO that was severely beaten.
Excuse me, Mr. Stroud, this is regarding
Yes, it
this
is.
item on our agenda.
Yes,
if you have
it
other
is.
public comment,
Yes, it
bring in
is.
public comment
You're going to
time.
be sued by him most likely. That would be a lawsuit, and that would be covered under conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. You should anticipate that.
Continue.
Okay. Well, thank you very much again. You didn't move on this quickly enough. Immediately when you have a situation in which an employee is involved in a felony, usually what you do is you...
Excuse me, I do not believe that the item is referring to our CAO. It's referring to 1795, I believe.
Section 5, well, it doesn't say it here. It doesn't say it in your agenda. This agenda is a contract with the public when you write it.
Why don't you get through your 3 minutes so we could go back to our work, Mr. Stroughton?
I will go through my 3 minutes, Mr. Board Chair.
Thank you.
The issue here is that you didn't have a closed session immediately when this happened. Whenever you have an employee that's involved in a felony that has a responsibility with the county, it's imperative that you move quickly to protect his reputation as well as the reputation of the county. Usually what you do is call a closed session, and in that closed session, you put him on administrative leave, have an investigation of whatever you have to investigate, and then take action later on, whatever that action has to be. You didn't do that in this case. He could sue you because his reputation is tarnished now because he's under medication and in severe pain taking action. He is not in complete control of his critical faculties at this time, okay? So I would very much like it if you would consider having a closed session regarding Mr. Alt to avoid litigation from either party. And I'm not talking about Mr. Benjamin, okay? I just want you to have a closed session. Please. Please. The reputation of the county is at stake here, not the individuals. Are we see clearly on this? I think we do. 36 seconds, go. whatever investigation you folks do, I'll be looking into this too, independently, because it is imperative that this county operate in a way that is respectable and respects everybody. That includes the board chair, regardless of how you feel about me. It includes you too. I try to treat you with respect but when you get me mad, Jack.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stratton. Have a good day. Good morning. Morning, and welcome to the Calaveras Board of Supervisors meeting for October 22nd, 2019. If you are able, will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Madam Clerk, will you please lead us?
Let us begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll move to announcements.
Do you want report of closed session?
We're
We're not gonna move to
report
announcements.
closed session will remain open till the end of the day.
No, we've got two.
Okay, excuse me. We will report on item number 1. Thank you.
Item number 1, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, closed session with county designated labor negotiator Che Johnson regarding employee organization Service Employees International Union. There was no reportable action taken. Item 2, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one case pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. This item remains open.
Thank you. Announcements. We'll move on to announcements. Clerk, you want to read it?
Okay.
Good morning, Board, Chair, and Marita. Don't hit me. I'm not asking for any money.
That's fine.
He's already done.
I would like to recognize a couple of our long-term employees that are retiring. I'd like Sherry Matos to step up real quick. Sherry started with our OES program. She was transferred to the Sheriff's Office in November of 2005. Since then, Sherry has assisted with the accounting and grants for various areas in the Sheriff's Office and our Custody Bureau. She's been a huge asset. She was in the Sheriff's Office, and we moved her over into the jail to help with budgeting. She's been phenomenal. She's going to be greatly missed. Did Joe show up?
Yep, he's here.
Joe's here. Her husband, Joe. I want to thank Joe for allowing her to put up with me for as long as she has. So I want to give kudos to her for her time with the county, again, since 2005. So thank you very much, Sherry.
Thank you, Sherry.
It's the one time we
And
were
then
clapping.
Gary Domaslicki. Can I go first, please, Mom? Gary started with the department in 2004. Don't go away, Sherry. He started with the department in 2004, working in our dispatch center. He then moved over to our sheriff services tech position in 2005. Since becoming sheriff's tech, he's worked the front counter, assisting the public with records requests, live scans, and routing reports to the probate agencies. Gary's super special because he retired as a teacher. So for all of us old folks that were in the sheriff's office that didn't know how to spell and have grammar and punctuation, he was our guru. So if we had a question, he was phenomenal because when our reports went to the DA's office, they didn't kick them back. And if they did, we could blame Gary. But we never got him kicked back at that point. So he was phenomenal. He's been great at the front counter, as Sherry was, working with people that come in. I've had people come to the office when Gary's out sick or on vacation or wherever, and they say, well, we'll wait till Gary gets back. So he's been a huge asset to the department, and he will be surely missed. I know Marita's got a couple things to say, but I want you board members to know, and yes, Marita too, that tomorrow we're going to have a little ceremony at the sheriff's office where we'll be giving them some plaques for their years of service, and you're all invited.
Thank you very much,
So-
Sheriff. And
What
thank you, Gary.
time?
What time?
Oh, I'm not telling you. I think noon, or is that noon? Yeah, it's at noon at the sheriff's office.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mom.
Our Madam Vice Chair fought her way up to the podium, so.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I got to know Sherry when she worked at the boat barn. Y'all thought that NCIS were the originators of the boat barn. No, Sherry was at the original boat barn. And she's been a hidden secret. All the paperwork having to do with applying to OES and making sure it was done, Sherry did it, where it was terrorism, whether it was hazmat, where it was the MAC team. Sherry's the one that kept the whole group together. You know, the boys wanted to go play with their toys, and Sherry would make sure everything was done well. So on behalf of the board and me, have your dream and fulfill. But I got a story after I tell Gary. Okay, so Gary, I have one for you. Well, he's not Gary to me, he's the professor. For the reasons that Rick mentioned, those of you who've worked with me know that grammar is really important, and what you write represents you, and then it represents the county. And if I ever had a question, is it then, or except, or whatever, so I'd call the professor, and he would tell me grammatically what it was done. So I am looking for somebody to take his place. Anybody here? Are you nodding? Yes, you'll do it? No. So what I hope you two do with this is, at least for the first month, you write down why you're so happy to be gone.
Well, real quickly, I wanted to thank Vonnie, also Gary's spouse, for allowing him to work with us. And I'm going to work on her to employ Gary to come back at budget time so he can schmooze Marita, so I might get what I need.
Gary, Sherry, thank you very much for all your service to the county. Sheriff, thank you for the announcement. Thank you, Supervisor Callaway, for the unexpected pleasure. Oh, yes. We will return to announcements.
Let the
Supervisor-
staff get through their announcements.
Okay. Staff have any announcements today? Kristen, welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Kristen Stranger, Health and Human Services Agency. In honor of October being recognized as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, the Health and Human Services Agency invites the community to join us for a candlelight vigil and speak out to honor those who have lost their lives to domestic violence, offering hope and support to those who are still facing abuse, and celebrate all survivors. There will be guest speakers, there will be community resources available, and the event and the candlelight vigil and speak out will be this coming Thursday, October 24th, from 5:30 until 7:30 at the San Andreas Library patio. If there's any questions, you could reach out to the Health and Human Services Agency, but we have been distributing a flyer over the past month or so. So again, we invite everybody to join us and hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chad?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board. I just wanted to take this time to announce the PSPS. I'm sure you guys have either received or have seen the social media. What is currently going on is within Calaveras County, there's 14,586 customers that are set to be shut down. The shutdown is supposed to begin tomorrow at approximately 1700 or 5 p.m. That shutdown will last until Thursday at noon, where they're supposed to receive the all clear for the weather. Once the weather all clear is received, then they will begin the line inspections and be shutting everybody back on. I was just on a 7:30 conference call, and they're hoping a 100% restoration by 7 o'clock on Friday after the line inspection. So I just wanted to take this time and announce that. And please follow the social media as I'm posting everything they're giving to me.
Where will they set up resiliency centers?
We have tentative, I fear saying it because I have not had them locked in. So if everybody knows to take that with a grain of salt, the tentative locations are Meadowmont up in Arnold, the West Point Community Center up in West Point, and then we're locking in with Murphy's Fire Department at the community center there at Murphy's. So those are the tentative dates. I'm just waiting for PG&E to give me, yes, we have these locked in, and then I will advertise those for certain.
Thank you very much. Other announcements from staff? Seeing none from the board?
Yes, thank you.
Mills?
Chair, considering the situation that has been brought into the public's view with our CAO, I am requesting that this board convene a meeting to discuss what has happened, to review what has happened, and also to make our statement about it and what our next steps are. So I know that my first email to you was somehow misplaced, and I did send an email to you regarding that, and I would like the board to consider that meeting as soon as possible.
Supervisor Mills, we generally consider special meetings for a poll of the board at the end of the meeting. Would you like to bring that back at that time?
I'll bring it back then.
Thank you. We'll move on to public comment.
Public comment. Any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard.
Thank you. Before we begin, there's always new people in the room, so we'll review the rules again. Everybody will have 3 minutes. This is not a question and answer period. The board, of course, can ask any questions they'd like at the conclusion of public comment. I'm very serious about the fact that it's very difficult for people to come up and speak in public comment. Often people are very nervous. Therefore, there will be no clapping or booing. If you like what somebody has to say, happy hands. If you don't, you could go thumbs down. But there'll be no sniping allowed from the crowd. Everybody, I expect to be respectful. Public comment is for items not on the agenda, so if it's because this is a comprehensive approach to a cannabis debate today, there's almost nothing that can be said from here during public comment that should be cannabis related. So, with that, Mr. Wilson, please lead us off.
Good morning, Board. It's been a while. My wife and I have been taking care of our grandson, and my wife's been fighting cancer. Today you're making decisions that are going to greatly affect everyone's lives in this room. In the beginning, God gave mankind one law. It's don't eat the fruit of that tree, for surely you will die. But they did eat from that tree. They found the fruit to be good. It opened their eyes, gave them knowledge. Did God lie to them? Or was he just trying to save them from having that knowledge? They were expelled from the garden before they could eat the fruit of the tree of everlasting life. So you can say, we did die from it. We will die. After that, God freed the Israelites from Pharaoh. He gave Moses 10 laws or commandments. We can't even have them publicly displayed in our country anymore. Those laws, the Israelites rebelled against. Throughout history, mankind has rebelled against unjust laws. Are the laws we sit here today contemplating just or unjust? Are they fair, unfair? Do they favor one side or another? Do they favor a certain group of people? Do they enrich the county through taxes and fees? Or do they take away from the freedoms that we supposedly have in this country? Freedoms to, as in the Pledge of Allegiance, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Is medical health Is that a right in this country? Do we have the right to take the medicines we want, or are we forced to take the medicines that government allows? That's a question you all have to answer. I have no vote in this. You're not putting it to a vote of this county. You're leaving it up to 5 people to make that decision. I hope you make a good one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Stroud?
How's everybody doing today? Let's just save that. I'm not going to talk about the county's efforts at community outreach and how they could be so disastrous. Instead, I'm going to talk about process and why we have process and why we've come up with processes that at times are not written, but are carried out over time and carried out in ways that are very specific to keeping people safe and keeping people honest and keeping people protected. And one of those processes is the closed session regarding employees. I know that you feel very threatened by the idea of having the board make decisions, Chair. But they are equals to you. And as equals, you should respect them and they should respect you. I have respect for you, even at times when you make mistakes. I still respect you as a person. When you originally came here, I offered my hand in friendship. That was never accepted. I wasn't hurt. I understand. I've offered my hand in friendship to many of you, and some of you have accepted it. And some of you, have been a long time now, and I appreciate you as people. But in order to continue with this level of respect that I have for you as a board, you have to stand up at times, all of you, and make your voice known to the chair, and make sure that he is operating within the parameters of good governance. We all make mistakes. Perhaps the mistake that you have made can be corrected at this time. The damage cannot, but perhaps the mistake can be corrected to the extent necessary to protect the CAO, those that may have been charged with crimes, and the community.
Thank you very much. Sir?
Good morning. I'm Dr. Don St. Clair. I'm a retired professor of medicine from Stanford who has lived in Angels for the last 13 years. I'm here because I have heard no one discuss the detrimental effects of this product.
Sir?
And yes.
We'll be discussing cannabis during the regular agenda. This is for items not on the agenda.
The reason I've come in early is I'm sorry I have
Sir?
an ill wife and an ill dog at home and I can't stay.
Sir, I'm very sorry to hear that, but I have to apply the rules equally. It'll probably only be, I'm sure people will allow you to go to the front of the line, probably only be another 15, 20 minutes. If you could wait, that'd be appreciated.
20 minutes?
Sir, I don't know the exact time, but we have to obey the rules of the board.
I'll try to wait for that time.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Wilson?
Good morning. Joan Wilson, District 1. Honorable supervisors, every one of you are trying to do your best, I know that. Honorable Chairman, In the early 1900s, Charlotte Haley was the woman that inspired the pink ribbon. With her, it was peach. It was a peach ribbon. For Charlotte, it was a tool to inspire women to become politically active to find the cause of breast cancer, such as cleaning up the carcinogens in the environment. She put them on a card. She put these peach ribbons on a card, and that card read, quote, "The National Cancer Institute annual budget is $1.8 billion. Only 5% goes to cancer prevention. Help us wake up our legislators and America by wearing this ribbon." I don't care if you wear a pink ribbon or a peach ribbon, but think of your mothers, think of your aunts, your grandmothers, your daughters, and think of those veterans that are on the front lines that have to endure the carcinogens that will later in their life possibly cause cancer. Recently, a local doctor, told me that 1 in 2 women suffer from some form of breast cancer. A cure would be wonderful. But that is not why I'm speaking to you. It is not your area of expertise. But you can do something. You have the power to write regulations to help find and fight the cause of not only breast cancer, but many cancers, and help cure be available. Olivia Newton-John has breast cancer. I'll talk more about her later. Let's not put profits over people, especially sick people. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Brock Estes, Valley Springs, I won't take but a moment. In light of Mr. Mills' suggestion that you need another meeting, I just wanted to remind the board that this is one of the few months of the year when you have a 5th Tuesday. And in the past, we've often had meetings that began at 6 p.m. on the 5th Tuesday. So if you sought a meeting time where more people would actually be able to see the board in action, I don't know if we've had a 6 p.m. meeting recently. And there's only a few months of the year when you have a 5th Tuesday. This is one. Thank you.
Good morning, Board. Gina Gonzalez, Angels Camp. It's been a while. I just wanted to say to Joan that my heart goes out to you. You're in my prayers. You really are. Breast Cancer Awareness Month is this month, and also eating disorders for children is this month. Anybody that has children, boys, girls, it touches many of our lives. Eating disorders are 5% of the children that are diagnosed in this country with eating disorders die from either suicide or starvation. It's a mental health issue that has touched my life. Our kids are our prize, and possessions. Children are our future. We need to start having this conversation in mental health. We need to start making it okay for people to talk about eating disorders. I can't tell you what it does to families. It ruins them. And we need to start talking about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez.
Hi, good morning. I'm just here to talk about a straight procedural issue. Has nothing to do with anything on the agenda. September 12th, a large group of us were denied public comment unlawfully. The sheriff department was called by the planning chair unlawfully. September 18th, we were also denied public comment unlawfully under CEQA, which has nothing to do with anything on the agenda today, but it has to do with CEQA. We were unlawfully called again. The sheriff's office was unlawfully called again. I called the sheriff's business line to tell them that I would be respectfully and civilly resisting that, and that's what we did. County Council Sarah Decay gave a 3 signal to Planning Chair Michelle Plotnick, who only allowed us then 3 minutes. We have been denied 10 plus 2 minutes of public comment. I'm respectfully asking that we did not allot that. That's not okay with us. By law, we are required to have those 12 minutes. I'm going to ask you, Supervisor Chair, if you're going to allow us today to have back the 12 minutes that we were unlawfully denied on September 12th and September 18th.
Ms. Montgomery, you are
Yes.
well aware that this is not a question and answer period.
Right. So I'm going to assume that you are denying us unlawfully those 12 minutes.
Your public comment.
Okay. So then we're just going to go ahead and speak for 12 minutes, those of us that were denied. Thank you so much.
Ms. Gorda, good morning.
Our country is sick. And it's sick because we don't pay attention to just common sense. And we're sick mentally, and we're sick physically. And part of the reason we're sick is we don't listen to our bodies. We don't listen what it has to say. Instead, we drug it up so that we can't hear what our body tells us. We have a tremendous amount of information available to us. That we're not taking advantage of. And so, I'm not perfect mentally, I'm not perfect physically, but I do try to listen to what my body tells me. And I take advantage of the resources that are out there, except for the medical people, because they cost a lot of money and I can't afford them. So, every little tidbit that you can pick up about your own health can help yourself and other people. And I think it's a huge vacuum, and we're filling it with drugs. Thank you.
The public speakers. Seeing none? Ms. Garza?
No, I'm not going to speak. I just wanted to
Excuse
see
me,
what this-
excuse me, Susan?
No.
There's a speaker coming up behind you.
Oh, I just wanted to see the password.
Good morning. My name is Laree Garza, District 2. On October 1st, during the meeting, it's always been made clear this is public comment. The board is not to comment back. Until a pro-pot gentleman approached the board, his first words were, "I know this isn't a back and forth, but I have a question about my permit." Jack, you responded to his question, not once, but twice. That showed great disrespect to the public. You also recently made a comment that our CAO is an innocent victim. Well, a man that sexually gropes women unwantedly over and over and over again is not an innocent victim. I know you're concerned about that, huh? Albert Alt was appointed by the Board of Supervisors as our CAO. There was a life scan done on him, which everybody saw. He's got dirty hands. He came from a background that was not clean. He was a police officer, but he was arrested for insurance fraud. His partner's the one that turned him in. He also identifies himself as a doctor. Well, we all know he lied about that because his degree wasn't from an accredited college. Also, several of his jobs that he's had in the past, he was dismissed immediately for suspicious circumstances. Yet, Jack, you voted him in with dirty hands. This innocent victim who gropes women. I don't see how that's acceptable. I really don't. You know, knowing that you did a live scan on this man and you still appointed him as our CAO makes me wonder about the live scans that are going to be done on the badges in the near future. Are they going to be done in the same mannerism where it doesn't matter what's on the report, let's just get them in? Honestly, I believe our county deserves better, which is why I'm running for Supervisor District 2 against you. I'm honest, I'm true, I'll listen to people. Is that funny? You're smiling, and please stop rolling your eyes at me because that is so disrespectful. Look down if you're going to roll your eyes. I'm running against you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Garza.
Thank you.
Other public comment? Seeing none, I will bring it back to the board. We'll take on consent agenda.
Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They'll be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion.
Any members of the board wish to pull an item? Members of the staff? Public? Ms. Morse?
14.
Thank you. Seeing no others, I will ask for a motion to remove the remainder. Moved by Supervisor Callaway. Second by Supervisor Stopper. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Remainder passes 5-0. Move to item 14.
Item 14. Item 14 is from the Public Works Department to authorize the board chair to execute an agreement with Sutton Enterprises for debris removal along countywide roads as a result of the 2019 winter storms in an amount not to exceed $319,378 for the term of October 22nd, 2019 through December 31st, 2019.
Ms. Morris, you had a question?
Yes.
You want to come up to this microphone?
Unfortunately, I didn't have the background on this, and I just wondered, what is the background on this, and was this sent out for bid, or how did, just, quick, how did this work?
Thank you. Mr. Pack?
Morning, Chair and members of the board. My name is Joshua Pack. I'm your Director of Public Works and Transportation. I'd be happy to provide additional information on this particular item. This is an item, as you're familiar with, the 2019 winter storms were declared a federal disaster. We have a number of different projects moving forward. The first one came to you, I believe, earlier this month for Independence Road. Similar project, a debris cleanup, and then the administrative oversight for that work. This is the second phase. This is a miscellaneous cleanup. Instead of having individual contracts for numerous local sites, we have one larger contract to clean up all of these smaller sites that don't have enough gravitas to be its own individual project. We did bid this through an RFP process, request for proposals. We received a couple of proposals for this, if memory serves. In this one, Sutton was identified as the most responsive and responsible bidder. We have negotiated a contract with them for the maximum not to exceed of $319,378. Upon approval of the board, that work will begin here probably within the next couple of weeks. And I'm available to answer any other questions you may have.
Are there any questions from the board? Seeing none, we will, I'll ask for a motion for this item.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Supervisor Stopper, second by Supervisor Mills. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. All right, making progress. Let's move on to the regular agenda. Actually, we're going to take, are you guys set up? All right. Let's move on to the regular agenda.
Item 16 is from the Planning Department to conduct a public hearing, accept the addendum to the environmental impact report for the medical cannabis cultivation and commerce ordinance project, make appropriate findings, adopt an ordinance amendment rescinding Chapter 17.95 of the County Code and replacing it with a new Chapter 17.95 regulating commercial and non-commercial cannabis cultivation, and direct staff to publish a summary of the ordinance.
Thank you. We are opening a public hearing. Mr. Maurer?
Good morning, Peter Maurer, Planning Director. We're back. So as you recall, over a two-day hearing, we went through the ordinance essentially line by line. Staff was given direction to make changes. That has been brought back. You've been provided a clean copy as well as one showing the underlined and strikeout of the changes that were made. We have a few more changes that as we're going through things, we sort of spot some corrections that needed. They're trying to resolve some understanding issues. So I'd just like to go through those. Can you focus on a little bit maybe? Is it my eyes or is it the...
I think that's a little out of focus. There should be a focus button or... There you go.
So we turn to, and we'll be looking at the underlined strikeout version that's in the board packet. The first change that we felt we needed to correct was it's on page 3 of the ordinance, page 196 of the document package. It's the definitions 1795-020J. Scroll down to that. Oh, come on. We added, because the board confirmed that they want to allow nurseries also as a permitted license type, we wanted to make sure that we didn't create a loophole that someone could apply for a nursery that didn't, count towards the overall canopy that we're looking at. The EIR addressed nurseries as a part of total cultivation, but because of the different license types, you just want to make sure. So we added this line, except that it shall also apply to immature cannabis cultivated by nurseries.
This is how I want to get through this today. So if there are items that there's an agreement on, we're just going to say yes and move forward. If they're not, we could always circle back on them. Does that work for you, Peter?
Works great.
Objections to this? Supervisor Toffenelli? Stopper? Supervisor Mills? Callaway? Thank you.
So the next one is the definition of commercial cannabis cultivation permit, and just really sort of a technical change. There was a sort of typo error on this one. Because of the ability to get multiple licenses under a single premises, we recommending that we strike A, so that would apply to any.
Okay.
So on T there, we just strike the word A.
Any objection?
So it could be then plural.
Seeing no objection, sensing consensus, continue.
The next one is on page 8 of the ordinance. RRR, the definition of total canopy area. And there was a discussion at the last meeting about our definition of canopy differed from what the state had. So we modified that in hopes of being consistent with state. So we're not looking at two different definitions.
Is there any objection to this change? Seeing none, sensing consensus.
On 1795-030B, the next page, there was just a little clerical error. The word "if" got struck out. It should have been "and." So you put the word "if" back in and strike the word "and," so that phrase would read, authorization from the county shall be issued by the county designated department if the applicant currently meets all eligibility criteria.
Any objection to that change?
So you're striking the word "and"?
Strike the word "and," put the word "if" back in.
Okay.
We have consensus.
So the next change is on page 13. The chart under 09 or 060D2. So again, we just want to make sure it's clear that a maximum of 1 acre of cultivation was going to be allowed for each 20 acres. We're changing the word "and" to "or," so that if someone has an outdoor cultivation, they can grow 1 acre. If they have a mixed light cultivation, they can grow a ½ an acre or 20,000 square feet. It's not "and," they can't have 1.5 acres of cultivation. So that's clarity. And then we had missed a poll that was taken by the board last meeting where the line "separate permit for each premises" was to be struck. So that's reflecting that change.
All right. I expect this one's going to need a poll. Supervisor Toffenelli? Supervisor Stopper? Supervisor Mills?
No.
Supervisor Callaway?
Yes.
Supervisor Garamendi, yes. For one, please make the change.
And then the next chart, similar change under indoor cultivation. So it said that up to 5 premises and a separate permit for each premise. Again, you could have multiple licenses within a premise. We want to make sure it's tied back to the county permit. And so we've just changed it so it reads up to 5 permits. And we've struck the separate permit for each premises.
Is there any objection to this? Seeing no objection, it's approved.
Next edit is on page 17. It is 060B6.
You said D6?
B is in boy.
D6.
So this is again to ensure that we're tying the cultivation to the amount of cultivation to the permit that the county is issuing rather than the premises, because there's some flexibility in the state rules as far as the amount of licenses that can be issued for a premise. So we added this line.
Any questions, or is anybody not agree with this change?
Just a second.
Supervisor Callaway?
I just want to read it.
Sure. Okay, is there any objection to this change? Seeing none, it's approved.
And then the last edit that we had is on page 21. It's 090, actually there's 3 sections, C, D, and E, the same change made for each one. So again, we're tying this back to the county permit rather than the state premises definition. So each of these sections would be changed to read canopy area per permit rather than on the premises.
Is there any objection to this change? Seeing none from the board, approved.
Okay. Oh, you're right. It's like that. Second to last change. On the next page, page 22, 090I2. This was just to clarify the language. Go.
Keep going.
Next page.
Keep going down.
I jumped over next page. So this one, just sort of rearranging the words a little bit so it's very clear. The issue here was that if you have co-location on a parcel and the parcel was next to a residentially zoned parcel, that the setback is greater. But if that residentially zoned parcel was 20 acres or more, that additional setback was not going to apply. And so the way we had written it actually was sort of reversed. And so we just corrected the language here. So it reads, notwithstanding subsection I1, 150 feet for co-location of cultivation sites as provided in section 17, blah, 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 and for parcels adjacent to parcels of less than 20 acres zoned RR, R1, R2, and R3. So if the R2 parcel is less than 20 acres, the greater setback applies. If it's greater than 20 acres, the greater setback does not apply. And that was the direction that we received from the board at the last hearing.
Thank you. Are there any objections to this change?
I disagree with co-location for security reasons, so I will object.
Very well. I'll poll the board. Supervisor Toffenelli, do you have objection to this change? No. Supervisor Stopper? Supervisor Stopper?
No.
Supervisor Mills? No.
Yes.
Supervisor
No.
Callaway?
Yes.
I'm sorry. You object, yes. Sorry.
He's a no, I'm a yes.
Yes.
No, I'm a yes, sir.
4-1.
Yes, I'm a no.
4-1, please make that adjustment. Before we move on to a broader discussion and public comment, are there other changes? Are there other items that were polled on at the last board meeting, delivered to staff that perhaps we didn't get interpreted that we want to discuss? Or is everybody good before we move on to public comment? Seeing none,
I did want to address a couple of items related to the environmental review. We did receive a last-minute letter yesterday from council representing interest group. They brought up two issues, one regarding the well testing, the other regarding air pollution associated with cultivation. The changes that the board made to the well testing requirements is essentially the same as what was required under the EIR. It's 5 years of testing. It's just the manner in which the testing is done is changed. The Environmental Management Agency Director felt that that was sufficient to provide the information necessary to determine whether or not there is a drawdown, an impact on the groundwater resources, and so we feel that that issue has been addressed in the addendum. The new issue that came up was regarding air quality and volatile organic gases associated with cultivation. The letter claims that a new study shows that cannabis cultivation will cause significant air quality impacts in the county. We do not believe this is accurate. The letter does not provide substantial evidence showing a new air quality impact. The study explains that cannabis plants emit VOCs. That's true for all plants. Cannabis is no different than any other plant already growing in the county. In fact, the study found that VOCs from cannabis is average for plants. The study also explained that VOCs only cause air pollution when they mix with nitrogen oxides and sunlight to produce ozone. The study notes that in rural areas, there are not a lot of sources of nitrogen oxides, so the chemistry isn't right for making air pollution. This is true for Calaveras County. The study was in Denver, where cannabis operations are close to congested freeways. Calaveras is not like Denver. We do not have a lot of sources of nitrogen oxides, so there wouldn't be a significant air quality impact even if cannabis does produce substantial VOCs. With that, we're recommending, based on the board's prior direction, that the board adopt the ordinance and adopt the findings that were prepared and included in your packet. I'll turn it back over to the board if you have any questions for me, and then we welcome public comments.
Questions for Mr. Meyer before public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to public comment. Let me emphasize again, before we start this, I expect everybody to act with respect. Your comments are to be directed to the board, not to staff. This is not a question and answer period. There are 4 cannabis items, so you should have 4 bites of the apple if you've got something you really want to say. Everybody will be limited to 3 minutes, no exceptions. If it gets disrupted, I will call break to the meeting, and if it continues, I will clear this room. Everybody clear? All right, Doctor, thank you for your patience.
Thank you. I've already introduced myself. My purpose in being here is that I have heard nothing about discussion of the health problems with this product. And let me make sure you hear this loud and clear. Cannabis is not a benign recreational drug. It can have very significant side effects, particularly in adolescence. The adolescent brain starts to develop at birth and doesn't complete that until age 21. Any of us who had children know that to be true. The side effects are so profound that the changes can be seen on MRI scans, and I would challenge any of you to simply Google cannabis effect on adolescent brain development, and you will be stunned. I'm going to quote from the New England Journal of Medicine, which is the most prestigious medical journal published in the United States. It says, effects with short-term use. Impaired short-term memory, making it difficult to learn and retain information. Impaired motor coordination, interfering with driving skills and increasing the risk of injuries. Altered judgment, increasing the risk of sexual behavior and facilitate the transmission of sexually transmitted diseases. And in high doses, paranoia and psychosis. If we think that this is simply an adult drug and that adolescent children are not going to have access to it, we are truly delusional. I'm sorry that I have to leave early. If anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask me, I would be happy to try to answer them now. Anyone? Thank you very much for letting me talk.
Thank you. Speaker, Mr. Howard.
Hello, Jason Hauer, Murphy's. Just want to remind everybody that this is not about the consumption of cannabis. That issue has already been settled by Proposition 64. All adults have the right to consume cannabis under Proposition 64. Right now, out-of-county cannabis companies can deliver cannabis to consumers in Calaveras County. What we are talking about is a land use designation, and will have very little impact on the issues that were just raised. That's it for today.
Ms. Wilson?
Good morning again. Joan Wilson, District 1, registered voter. Honorable supervisors, I would like to ask you to look around this room. Not only this room, but look around the county. Can you tell me who suffers from asthma, heart failure, diabetes, Lyme disease? Can you tell me who has fibromyalgia? How about cancer? On September 30th, I did not have recreational surgery for recreational cancer. I did have a tumor removed from my body. It was larger than they thought. Over 20 years ago, the voters voted to allow medical marijuana and the right for a patient to grow their own medicine. My concerns are for this part of the medical regulation. The state allows for 24 plants for medical use. To restrict that would be akin to limiting medical care to a person. I need 24 plants because I have developed the strains that I use for my body. I'm not saying that cancer can be cured by cannabis. I do believe that some cancers can be cured by cannabis. I believe that it can help with end of life and through the journey to that end. 24 plants. There are times for months that I will need a very high concentration of cannabis. I can't take a lot of the drugs that the doctors give. I won't take the opioids. I've had a homeopath help me get over taking an opioid because of a dental procedure. I'm vegetarian, so the doctors say I'm close, I'm halfway there. I don't drink, I don't smoke. I listen to my body. Please, with a doctor's recommendation, allow a person to grow their own medicine. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson. Guy behind you.
Good morning again, Board. I could give a whit whether you make medical, commercial marijuana legal in this county. Again, I'm here to speak for personal medical marijuana, which was approved by the voters in 1996 in this state, which has led to this whole movement throughout the United States. Over 35 states have some kind of cannabis regulation for medical use. Some, 9 or more, have recreational, California being one of those. I don't give a darn about recreational marijuana. We've always used marijuana for medical purposes. We've grown for medical purposes. And I'd rather give it away, now that the state allows that again, than charge anybody for a plant that could help them, either with their end-of-life pain instead of taking opioids, which about 95% of us are going to die on opioids in this room unless we die of something else. When you get to end of life, what they do is they give you a bottle with an eyedropper. And your folks that are taking care of you, whether you're in hospice or you're staying at home or you're in a you're going to get dropped morphine and starve to death. That's how you die. You people want to make money off of it for the county. Good for you. Great. I don't care. I'd even pay tax on my medical marijuana if that's what I have to do. But 24 plants are what the state allows. Not 6, not 3, not indoors, not in the closet, in a little tent that you plug into the wall. The sun is the best light in the world. You have a growing season. If you have 24 plants, that's 2 plants of less than a pound, which when you create FECO, RSO, whatever you want to call it, hemp oil, you get about 60 grams for every kilo or half a kilo of product. That's what you use when you're on chemo. That's what you use to fight tumors for cancer. Personal people can basically grow 6 plants in our county. What a great product that would be. 6 plants, that's a half a plant per month when you need 2 plants to make medicine. But okay, you guys have that. It's in your court. I hope you make the right decisions.
Thank you. Next speaker. If you intend to speak, if we could line up no more than 5 in a row at the back door, it makes things move a little quicker.
Good morning, Dina Morris. I'd like to talk about the water portion of the EIR. According to the EIR that we're going to use, it takes roughly 450,000 gallons for a half-acre grow. So now we're going to allow outdoor grow. Now we're going to allow 1 acre of outdoor grows, and that's roughly 900,000 gallons of water per season. And then we're also now in the ordinance going to allow co-location. So on a 100-acre parcel, and let's just use round numbers for the sake of this discussion, we're talking about 5 million gallons of water on a 100-acre parcel. So if it's a 200-acre parcel, you can double that. I just received a news alert yesterday saying that this winter is going to be a dry winter. Now I know, and I brought this up before, the water tables in certain areas, including Copperopolis, are low to none. So if you start allowing this kind of growth near our communities, it is most certainly going to likely have an impact on the residents' water. And if we don't have water, we have nothing. And people start running out of water, that's a serious problem that the county is going to be facing. And people who allow that might face it individually as well. That's a serious problem and it needs to be talked about. It's not addressed efficiently in the existing EIR or addendum. We're under totally, completely different circumstances now going into a possible ordinance. That's not okay. This addendum is not okay. It doesn't address the water issues. I don't know why we are rushing through this and not taking a second look at this issue in and of itself. That's our most precious resource. And for people to start running out of water because they've got this huge consumption of water nearby, that's ridiculous. I think the county is putting itself in a position it doesn't want to be in by doing this without doing the appropriate studies. You can't take it back. Once you let it out there and our water's gone, it's done. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker, Ms. Cora.
The other night, I was looking out my windows at the stars, and I saw a movement at the side of my eye, and there was this squirrels, 2 squirrels, going up this tree, and he kind of looked back at me. He was all stretched out and very athletic looking, and he looked at me with the tiniest bit of pomp, as if to say, we live here too. The rules and regs in this addendum do not reflect the watershed impacts to the average person in Calaveras County. The average citizen is expected to go hire a lawyer if their environment is aesthetically or poisoned as a result of these very loose rules regarding pot growing. When I turn on or off the road I live on, there is a stench that smells like fresh dung. This comes from a 12 by 8 greenhouse on a 1/2 acre plot. You are not representing the pot. You are not representing the people who live here with this addendum. You are representing the pot people. There is a 58% rise in minor use of vaping marijuana in the last year.
Thank you. Mr. McManus?
Good morning. It's been said that we have a problem with the water, and we all know that you can go weeks without eating, but only days without having water. When I was going through the ordinance, something kept reoccurring to me that there's so many trap doors and escape hatches for enforcement in this ordinance. First, I thought it was poorly written. Then I came to the conclusion that it was very cleverly written. If we look at some of the water, so I took water, just to use as an example of what happens time and time and time again in 1795. If you look at 1795.060, subsection B, 11, double I, there's a requirement for wells to be powered by photovoltaic panels. That's solar panels. If you look at 1795.070I, water well testing measurement to ensure adequate water available. Go to great lengths to describe that. 1795.090, subsection N1, use of generators only in an emergency. Emergency is not defined. 1795.090 EE, continued testing of wells on an annual basis as we go forward with this. 1795.090 FF, vehicle delivery of water prohibited except in an emergency. 1795.140 subsection C 1, for renewal, ensure wells continue to provide necessary water. 1795.140 C2, provide evidence of alternate water source for failed or inadequate wells. You've got to be kidding me. There are so many escape hatches here. Anyone can do anything. What's an emergency? You know, you're going to provide for an alternate source of water. How do you do that? You do a rain dance, you dig a ditch, you put more wells in where you've got dry wells, you overpump the area? Or do you start using water trucks? Well, it says in here you can't use water trucks except in an emergency. So everything is very circular. And I don't know how in the world you're going to unravel this when it comes time to enforce these regulations, because they're in conflict with each other. They're poorly defined. And I think it was done on purpose, because in the chaos of trying to enforce these bad ordinances, everyone just raises their hand and says, we don't know. Who's going to do it? Is code compliance going to do it? Is the sheriff going to do it? Do you expect the state to come in here and take care of the water? They've already told you. They're done. They don't have any money or inspectors. It's up to us. And none of it can be enforced the way it's written. It's circular and it's deceptive, and it's a scandal to treat the people of this county like this over the issue of water. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment? Again, if you could line up in the back so I keep track, no more than 5 deep, it's much appreciated.
Question first. Did I understand you to say that there will be 4 separate sections of public comment where people can testify
There are
repeatedly?
4 different items.
Okay, so you will be able to repeat yourselves. Okay. Then I think I'll have enough time to get through this. I'm here because I'm really the only person who doesn't have a side. I'm looking for a compromise, and I think that's what you should be looking for also. Again, a series of 3-2 votes achieves nothing. It's a failure by this board. The 3 may celebrate, but then it'll be 3-2 the other way in a couple years and 3-2 again. You've got to come to something that you can get 5 votes on. Now, previously I suggested that you check the model of Montgomery County, Maryland after Prohibition. When Prohibition ended, organized crime controlled alcohol. And states and counties were afraid that organized crime would apply for the liquor permits using straw men or front men. And so 18 states reserved that right unto themselves to sell liquor, to not have private people involved. And in Maryland, which did not reserve the right to itself, the county of Montgomery, which was at the time a rural county of 50,000 people, sound familiar, decided that they wanted to reserve the right to themselves. They created a county liquor authority, and even today, 100 years later, if you buy alcohol in Montgomery County, you don't buy it from a private person, you buy it from the county. So the county is easily able to enforce all these rules and regulations which you talk about because they're controlling it. Your proposal to put 200 people in different locations being somehow regulated, which is really only going to be self-regulation, is an impossible and foolish way to do it. I have a minute left, so I'll concentrate on the security aspects of that. Perhaps you're aware that in September, the medical marijuana distributorship in Sonora was raided, burglarized, at 4 in the morning by 4 people. They haven't caught them. They made away with $70,000 worth of product, and that was in an area where there are things. You don't think that 4 in harvest season, the gangbangers from Stockton and Modesto aren't going to drive an hour out to a remote rural location and rob growers? You expect every grower to be responsible for their own security? That's crazy. The way to do it is grow all in one place with the county running it, and I'll elaborate on that next time. Thank you.
Good morning, Board. Ann Hill from McCullough Hill. I'm going to bring up the Marijuana Business Daily from November 20th of 2018, and it talks about Calaveras' new electees for the board, which is Marita, Ben Stopper, and then it also refers to Jack Garamendi. I have the quotes here from each of the 3 of you in that article, but I don't need to read those. You all wanted to bring in marijuana. How many of you had town halls with your constituents? It's real easy to answer. It's called none. You realize we, the people, are directing you to do our bidding for us. But none of the 3 of you had any town halls. You did not ask your constituents if they want pot here or not. And I believe the reason is because the people do not want it in this county. They don't want it. You've been hearing this for 3 years. We don't want it. We don't need it. People want to buy pot, they can go elsewhere and actually buy it. Okay, the public doesn't want it. Okay, and then I'm going to change subjects. On October 2nd, for the continued meeting from October 1st, Jack passed a note to Marita Callaway. And Marita's demeanor changed when she got that note. That note should have been read in the public eye. That should have been read out loud during this meeting, that meeting. Because that's not right, to pass notes and then read them separately and not let the public know. My thought is take this top ledge down so we can see what's actually going on up there. So we can keep track of what is right and what is wrong. The other item I had, and I don't have to repeat it, is water. You're not talking about water and where in the heck the water is going to come from when we run out, so all the pot growers can grow their pot and have 6 gallons per day per plant. Wrong. Absolutely wrong that you're doing that to the general public. Thank you.
Next speaker.
I'm Richard Golan, District 5 resident, and we've heard this morning from a doctor about the detrimental effects of cannabis. We've heard from several residents about alleged benefits of it. For my part, I'll believe the doctor. And we may not be able to change what the state has done, but let's not add to that. We don't need commercial marijuana here. And the people are against it. You may recall a couple of years ago that the initiative to regulate marijuana, which was on the ballot, failed. And you also know that we had an initiative which would have created a ban. And it was challenged and thrown out on a technicality, but it was challenged because the growers knew it would pass. So the people are against the commercial marijuana. Let's listen to the people too.
Good morning, Vicki Reinke. And yes, I'm aware that we're going to have opportunities to speak on each of the items, so I want to just speak to what you're looking at right now, and that's the ordinance 1795. And there's been some good comments on the two things we're voting for at the same time, and that's the EIR and the ordinance itself. So I would like to just address the ordinance itself. We're just heading in the same direction as we did with the UO, the urgency ordinance. If you pass this ordinance today, 1795, we have nothing in place to make that ordinance happen. We know what happened the last time when the word got out, we're regulating in this county. Illegal growers came flocking in, and people who wanted to be legal growers get a permit. We don't have the staff to handle it. We don't have anything in place, and those will be coming up later in the meeting today, so I'll wait and comment on some of that. And just like this gentleman said right before me, I get people coming up to me and saying, Vicki, I thought we voted about the regulation. And I said, yeah, you did. And we voted no on Measure D, which was regulation. Now, did the people read the whole ordinance? No. They didn't. They read the heading that said, do you want to regulate marijuana in Calaveras County? And if you all recall, that campaign to pass that was very well done in trying to trick people into voting for it. But the people didn't buy it. They voted no. We didn't want regulation here in Calaveras County. And so I'm glad this gentleman also brought that up. And people, they can't understand. They said, did our vote not count? So I don't understand it either. The people have spoken in Calaveras County about regulation. So they're quite shocked that there's three of you that want to just override everybody's concern and just vote this in. So keep that in mind. And like I said, the other thing is that if you pass 1795, I don't even know how you can do that. I hope you postpone that vote and make sure we have everything in place. We had that study session where every department got up here and said, please don't do this to us again. We need staff, we need training, we need all these things in place before you put one more permit out there. And that's not what this ordinance says. There's no clause in that ordinance that says we have to wait until the program is in place. And we'll see today that there's some steps that you want to take towards it, but it's all on paper. There's nothing in place. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Montgomery?
Yeah, hi. I just want to start out by thanking a couple people on this side. This gentleman was especially polite to me.
Excuse me, Ms. Montgomery?
What?
Please address the board.
This gentleman in the back was especially polite to me. Jason Howard's been polite to me all along the way, and I do want to recognize them. The second thing I want to recognize is that I was pretty astonished this morning in honor of the Me Too movement that Supervisor Calloway would acknowledge a woman and then accuse the boys of playing with their toys. That's a blatantly sexist comment against the men in law enforcement, and it is unappreciated. We don't make fun of men that way. We don't make fun of women that way. I think you need to apologize to them. Now I'm going to talk to you straight up about CEQA. So, September 12th, CEQA was violated. Tim Laddish made significant changes, and they went forward with it without the public getting a chance to comment. September 18th, Tim Laddish made additional significant changes without the public getting a chance to comment. That's clear, and that is the law. Yesterday, I talked to the Chief Deputy Director of the California Office of Planning and Research, Scott Morgan. He confirmed that. He also confirmed that the general plan has to be done, enacted and implemented before we start all this. We are doing this not in the right order. You could look at me, Ms. Stedfeld, it's okay. And then the other thing is that we are over and over and over again breaking the law. Today, there's significant changes made. Now, we're not getting a chance to digest them. If you vote on them today, you will again be violating CEQA. This is a notice of violation, several. Let's talk about the Clean Air Act. I disagree with Peter Maurer in that marijuana emits terpenes. Those are the volatile organic compounds. It doesn't say that you have to be in LA or New York or Denver. They do interact with the nitrogen oxide. You don't have to have a ton of cars. You have to have one car. It creates ground level ozone. That's called smog. That's what you get. That's what we found. Sounds outrageous, but it's true. Going further, Green Freedom LLC versus Olympic Region Clean Air Agency, we now have precedent. Because of the Clean Air Act, you can't just call it ag and go, well, if it stinks, it's too bad. No, you can't even install exhaustive scrubbers to try to get rid of the indoor smell of marijuana. You can't try to do anything to mitigate the outdoor smell. It's against the Clean Air Act to try to mask or conceal odors through those means. Now, I challenge you to pass a regulation that will be okay with the Clean Air Act when we already have legal precedent. They appealed it. It was upheld in Washington State. Thank you.
Very much, Mr. Montgomery. Terry?
Good morning, Terry McBride, District 2. I'm one of the people. Most of the people I speak to that are either long-term residents, lifelong residents as myself, generational residents as myself, are for the cannabis grows, period. Now, I respect their feelings. We all are going to disagree and agree. That's fine.
Excuse me, Terry, can you
Yes,
just
sir.
wait a second? Folks, I was very clear. No sniping from the audience to people who are up here speaking. Thank you for your patience.
In regards to the water, what about orchards? What about vineyards? We have huge vineyards in this county. How much water do they use? I haven't heard anybody complaining, but I do remember when they came in, there was the same sort of outcry. And yet, look at what they give to this county. There's no denying. Look at Highway 4. Even we have a little bit up in the various districts, vineyards that are doing well. They use water, as do the orchards, as do the cattle, for goodness sakes. As far as scent, I can't stand the smell of sulfur. Vineyards, you know, I mean, that's part of it. And we were completely and utterly surrounded by grows. I smelt it one night, and they were all illegal, so I guarantee you they weren't trying to mask the smell. I smelled it one night. That was it. And we were completely surrounded, 360 degrees. So this people would like to see the cannabis grow. These types of good folks that want to do a good business in this county and give to their community and give to this county, I think it's a good thing. I stand in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Doc?
Good day, Proponent Randall Smith, District 4. I just want to call attention to the public, this attachment in the packet today, and it's a flow chart that shows the cannabis application procedures. Look at what everyone has to go through under this regulation. First, you submit an application to cannabis headquarters where they determine your eligibility, make sure your application is complete, and if it is, then you can go through to your validation checklist with the planning department where they look at the zoning clearance, they look at your zoning clearance, they determine whether you need a CUP or an AUP, or whether there's a zone change or some kind of parcel line change that will be required. Then you have to circulate a business license and county validation checklist where you go to the building department where they look at your parcel map, they determine if the existing permit is not adequate, and then you get referred to contractors for design and build and a lot of work. Then you go to the fire department. For CAL FIRE, they'll again review the parcel map, they'll look at fire clearances, WUI compliance, adequate fire flow, on-site storage. If you don't have those things, you're referred to a design specialist and you're directed to return when permits are issued for all those things. Then there's Public Works. Parcel map reviewer, again, that's like the fourth time. They look at encroachments, open grading permits, proper erosion control measures. If not, you're referred to an engineer and you have to return your application with the proper permits issued. Then environmental health, septic adequate for intended use, the wells signed off, determine whether the cultivation plan requires on-site wastewater permit. And if you don't have those, if those things are required, again, you have to go get them fixed and return your application with those permits issued. You go to the agriculture department next for review of your cultivation plan. Enrollment in pesticide program is required. If contracted to do so, the AG department would participate in the inspections on behalf of the CDFA. Then you go get a CBCB, you get your card. Finally, code compliance and ag, review the parcel map for the 100th time, sorry if I'm exaggerating, 5-6 times. Site inspection, if there's code violations, you got to fix them. And then finally, you get your business license and your checklist complete and you're validated. It's a long process. This is serious regulation. It's going to be tough on everybody. It'll be good for the community, for public safety, and it'll bring in the tax dollars we need. So I urge you to adopt this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, Carol Couchman, District 2. I want to thank you for spending the time to really set up a good ordinance for the county regarding commercial cultivation of cannabis. I'm very encouraged that the Cannabis Department will be set up and will run the program. That is what I feel is the best option, as I have stated in the past. Please don't let the small group of people who are spreading misinformation throughout the county sway you from doing what is best for everyone in this county. I can guarantee you that there are many more residents of this county who want regulation and roll their eyes at the fear-mongering and outright lies that are part of the campaign that the ban committee is waging. With approximately 47,000 residents in this county, there will always be a small group of people who are going to keep trying to push their negative point of view on this issue. But I would say at least 80% of the residents in this county are supportive of regulation and understand that this ordinance is the beginning of a way to keep the county solvent and able to provide services. I got into the cannabis world after it saved my daughter's life. I never thought I would become a person who spoke about this at board meetings. As a studying herbalist, I'm continuously amazed by what this plant can do. I will always be a supporter of cannabis. And as research catches up with what we already know anecdotally, many people will realize that they have been afraid of this plant for no reason other than being brainwashed by our current political and medical systems, just like I was. Cannabis was the most prescribed medicine during the 19th and early 20th century in the United States until 1937. 33 states have legalized medical or recreational cannabis, as well as the District of Columbia. Federal prohibition is going to end. I commend you for your willingness to do your research and understand the system that the state of California has implemented for legal cannabis and making the effort to craft a good system of regulation. It's the right thing to do. The ban has not worked. The black market is still thriving in part due to bans. Regulation is what is going to work. How is regulation going to lead to illegal grows in the neighborhoods? How can there be an influx of cartels and violent criminals when a new ordinance is in effect? This is the kind of garbage that's being spewed around by the ban committee. Every single thing that they're objecting to has been addressed in the new regulation, yet they still insist on spreading the hate and the fear. It has become more about winning than doing the right thing. It's more about power than what is good for this county, which is a thriving economy and attracting other ancillary businesses. No matter what is said to you and what threats you have received, please know the silent majority is behind regulation. The hardline stance is not the way to deal with this issue, and I really hope all this hate can stop. Thank you for your time and your willingness to stand up to bullies and signs that threaten you. You're doing the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wicki, if there are people out in the hallway that want to come in and speak, if you could please come in and line up so I keep track of this meeting. Ms. Wicki, your floor.
I was under the impression that with the environmental review, public comments stopped a year and a half ago, and that people had an opportunity to write responses to the environmental impact review back then. At no time was I noticed, and I read all the public notices, that public comment was reopened. So I think that it's inaccurate to suggest that people be able to comment on a long closed public comment. Also, I have seen correspondence, I don't have it in front of me, from the office cited earlier about a general plan needing to be in place. And that is not true. It does not need to be in place for this ordinance to be adopted. There hasn't been a general plan update in 20 years, or more than 20 years.
Excuse me. Apologize for that.
Yeah, so anyway, I have seen a lot of misinformation and banner ads in the area newspapers that go line by line and talk about things like manufacturing being in this ordinance. Anybody that reads this ordinance see that the opposite is true. I've seen statements that over 700 farms, those that were denied, are going to be allowed to participate again. It's my understanding that is absolutely false, that only 190 to 200 farms will be eligible. So I'd love it if we could get somebody on the record to debunk some of the paid advertisement from the opposition, because while people have a right to free speech, I don't think that people should have a right to outright lie in advertisement. If we can't, if manufacturers aren't allowed to lie about the benefits of their toothpaste, I don't know why Facebook or newspapers or anybody like that is allowed to accept money for misleading advertisement. It seems unethical, and it's just patently false what the opposition is putting out there. When people say that once the water is gone, it's never coming back, we've been through many droughts, and it rains again, sometimes too much, and water tables are replenished. It's not true that once the water is drawn down, it never replenishes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further public comment, please. And again, Neil, could you tell people out there if they're going to talk, they need to line up?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Board. I'm sorry I didn't stand up. I wasn't sure I was going to talk. I'm not a public speaker. I am a concerned citizen. My name is Steve Yanez. I live in Valley Springs, longtime resident of Calaveras County. Chose freely to bring my family here, raise my family here, because we enjoy Calaveras County. Don't know most of you folks, but I want to know that I understand the burden of responsibility you carry when you represent the people that elected you. I do pray for all you folks, that we make wise decisions. I pray for our sheriff and his department, all of his fine folks. I am a little concerned over the whole thing. I don't remember my representative seeking out comment as far as what we thought about it in our area. There's been a lot of talk on, how many people approve it or disapprove of it. I believe that issue was settled at the ballot box at one point. I don't think there's been another election on it. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but as a citizen, I watched the chaos. I watched the devastation that took place in our community the last time we legalized commercial cultivation. Now, I know there's been a lot of effort put forth into trying to alleviate some of that. There were some comments made earlier as far as what kind of folks come into our community when we have this stuff going on. Took a family vacation, went out of town to another state. Talking to a gentleman there and told him I was from Calaveras County. And he was well aware, that's where you guys get to grow the marijuana. I'm not speaking out against for health care. I mean, the law is the law. But commercial cultivation of cannabis is a whole other ballgame. And I just, like I said, I chose to raise my family here. I'd like to raise my grandkids here in Calaveras County. But I'm concerned about what's going to take place in our community if we choose to go forward with this commercial cultivation of cannabis. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Linda Patterson. I have a written comment for you, but I think the person that just spoke to you from his heart was definitely someone you should listen to, along with a doctor who told you what is going to happen to our youth When you have guns in your house, do you keep them in a safe? If you have alcohol in your house, do you keep those items out of your children's hands? We have history that tell us children can do very many things without our knowledge. And the doctor from Stanford is telling you what is going to happen when we are not paying attention and our children use the cannabis that will affect their brain. I really think that we need to pay attention to other states that have legalized, the state legalized, the use of cannabis. They have, those states are Colorado, Washington, Alaska, and Oregon. From the time they legalized, the use was in 2014, 2015. There's been an increase of 37% murders and 25% more aggravated assaults. You were given a book with this statistic written in it called Tell Your Children the Truth About Marijuana, Medical Illness, and Violence. Your sheriff told you that when you legalize the use of growing cannabis, there will be many growers who grow illegally alongside of what you think is a good thing to do. He's there for you. Are you going to use his information? I don't think that the people that stand before you that have done research are telling you incorrect information, but if they are, it's your responsibility to find out. And the last thing I want to say is, in the Bible, Philippians 4, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things.
Thank you.
Good morning. Last time there seemed to be some confusion about greenhouse gas emissions, and forwarded a study done that shows the science behind hemp as a carbon sink. 1 hectare of industrial hemp can absorb 22 tons of CO2 per hectare. It is possible to grow 2 crops per year, so absorption is doubled. Hemp's rapid growth grows 4 meters in 100 days. It makes one of the fastest CO2 to biomass conversion tools available, more efficient than agroforestry. The conclusions, well, industrial hemp is a self-offsetting crop. According to DEFRA, the Department of Environment, Food and Agriculture for the UK, UK farming emits a total CO2 equivalent of 57 million tons in greenhouse gases. UK agricultural land use is 16.5 million hectares. This amounts to an average of around 3.1 tons of CO2 per hectare total embodied emissions. As a low fertilizer and zero pesticide herbicide crop, with little management input, the carbon emissions of hemp cultivation is well below the average. Therefore, we can assume the matter remaining in soils roughly offsets the cultivation and management emissions. The vast quantities of hemp-derived products and raw materials created by large-scale cultivation could replace many oil-based, unsustainable products and materials, particularly in construction, looking in captured CO2 and creating secondary benefits to the global environment. In particular, hemp could be used to replace significant quantities of tree-derived products, allowing reduced use of existing tree populations, thus maintaining their CO2 uptake. So, in conclusion, the cultivation of industrial hemp is vital in our battle to reduce pollution, conserve precious water resources, and to improve soil quality. Industrial hemp is unmatched as a means of sequestering carbon dioxide and binding it permanently in the materials it is manufactured into. The accreditation of industrial hemp as a generator of carbon credits will make its cultivation more attractive. In addition, the fiber is robust and a large variety of uses as paper, textile, and as biofuel. The seeds are available sources of protein for humans for use in animal feed. This will stimulate a whole new industry and reduce reliance on imported goods. The widespread cultivation of industrial hemp will give a much needed economic and sustainable boost to remote country areas suffering high unemployment and hardship. Thank you.
Good morning. I'd just like to take a couple of minutes to counter one of the assertions put forward by members of the Residents Against Commercial Marijuana. This is an email and a response to the, where is it? The Governor's Office of Planning and Research. I'm writing to get some clarity from your office regarding statements that have been circulated locally claiming that your office has taken a position vis-a-vis Calaveras' proposed cannabis ordinance. Specifically, the following statement made in a paid advertisement placed in the local paper by an organization known as the Calaveras Residents Against Commercial Marijuana. Quote, "The general plan isn't complete. No new industry can be introduced into a county unless and until a general plan is adopted, enacted, and implemented," end quote. According to the State Governor's Office of Planning and Research, as confirmed February 26, 2019 at 3:20 p.m. with Director Kate Gordon. The county is ignoring this law too. Did your office, here's the question, did your office speak with Alice Montgomery on February 26, 2019 at 3:20 p.m. with Director Kate Gordon? The county, excuse me, computer went to sleep. And is this an accurate characterization of your discussion? Is it the official position of the OPR that no new businesses or industries can operate in Calaveras County until the general plan update is adopted, enacted, and implemented? Is Calaveras County, by considering and/or adopting the proposed cannabis ordinance, violating the law, and if so, what law is the county violating? The response to that reads, from Kate Gordon, as I have already stated, I never made this statement. It should not be attributed to me. I have no knowledge of who may or may not have made such a statement. I'm carbon copying our chief counsel, Jeannie Lee, as well. Kate Gordon, thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment? Seeing none. All right.
Sorry.
How many more public comments do we have? Mr. Morris, are you standing up to do public comment on this? You will have you'll be the last public comment. Jen?
Morning, Jennifer Smith. I just want to thank the board and the staff on the time that they've spent on this ordinance. It's a big change from the UO. It's a big change from Measure D. So for people to say that we've already voted this down is, I think, an incorrect statement. I think we're taking a cautious approach. Most importantly, we're putting 190 people back to work at a minimum. We're bringing money into our county budget. We're bringing economic impacts to our local retailers, property taxes. We need to move forward. We're doing it cautiously. We also need to come to the grips that this is a culture war, and we need to stop being prejudiced against one another, and we need to stop being ageist on both sides. This is a younger demographic that tends to cultivate this crop. It is an agricultural crop. We bring families, we bring children. My 6 employees would love to get back to work, and these are all benefits to our county. There's still illegal farms. There will always be illegal farms, but let's generate the revenue to police that. I'm just asking for your continued consideration to move this county forward so that we can all heal, move forward. I know there will continue to be backlash, but let us do the right things. Let us be engaged in our community, and let's continue to move forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Morris, you will wrap up public comment.
Susan Morse, District 4. As each of you are aware, the Calaveras residents retained legal counsel, Shute, Mahaley, and Weinberger, who previously submitted written comments on September 11th and the 30th with respect to the county's proposed new cannabis cultivation ordinance, the addendum, and the proposed findings. The county has ignored residents' concern and has not responded to any of these comments raised in our council's prior letters. The letters explained in detail why the county's proposed addendum fails to comply with the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act, as well as the state planning and zoning laws. In addition, each of you were served yesterday, October 21st, with a letter supplementing the previous mentioned letters addressing the latest revisions the board made to the project addendum and the proposed findings since the October 1st and 2nd board meeting. The revisions have not cured the defects brought to your attention, and in some instances, the revisions have introduced new problems or made existing problems worse. Just one example, which you've already heard today, changes regarding well testing and groundwater supplies would create more severe groundwater impacts. Bottom line, as long as there is a bare minimum of groundwater available to serve a marijuana operation, the county no longer cares whether groundwater supplies have decreased overall. As long as there is insufficient groundwater for marijuana, the county will allow declines in supply that will negatively impact neighboring agricultural uses and biological resources. The county's revisions have not solved the problems with the ordinance or cured the county's non-compliance with CEQA and state planning and zoning laws. Unless and until the Board of Supervisors complies with CEQA, it must reject the proposed cannabis program, including the cultivation ordinance, the badging ordinance, and the Division of Cannabis Control, due to the likely devastating effects on the environment which have not been adequately analyzed to date. And where does this leave the Calaveras residents, who have been and will again be harmed? The total disregard for all of the residents and their children in this county, including your constituents, is astonishing. All this, as some of you have said, is to make good for the growers. I do not need to spell out the issues. We have all heard them over and over again from the sheriff, the district attorney, department's head, and from the residents all over this county. At the last meeting, the line was long with residents who told their stories and pled with you to change your course, all to be ignored. Rethink your decision before it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we will close public comment and take a 5-minute break before we return. Sorry, want to get done by Welcome back. I have been informed that 5 minutes is a little short, so in the future we'll go 10. Apologize to everybody who had to rush back and forth to the restroom. We are on item number 16. We have had staff report. We have had public comment. I will bring it back to I brought it back to the board for further discussion or a motion. Who would like to begin?
I'll begin. I've been involved in this topic for almost 5 years now. For those of you who know me, I was a proponent, along with Barton Steveno, Roger Orman, Gary Howard, and River Class for Measure D. My position on that was that we have to regulate this industry. We need to be able to cipher out those people who are serious, who want to do it correctly, and those that don't. And those that don't, I want them out of my county. So going through it, the time that I was off the board, I pretty much kept away from the trauma drama that was going on in this boardroom. though I understand now what all of you, whatever side of the issue you're on, were going forth on your position on regulating cannabis for commercial grow. And then we hear hemp is now legal federally. If that's a beer being opened, I'll have one. In fact, I think the room would like one, council. Yeah. Okay. So I've looked at this quite closely. I have talked to many people in my district on many occasions. When it was Measure D, Mr. McManus and I were on the campaign trail. He was a no on D, I was a yes on D. So it's not as if I haven't been in touch with where people in my district are and where people are throughout Calaveras County. So we can all find a reason to support or to not support it. But because of my experience with this as an elected and as a non-elected, I am going to make the motion on item 16. And my motion is to accept the addendum to the EIR, make the appropriate findings, and adopt an ordinance amendment rescinding Chapter 17.95 and replacing it with the new Chapter 1795, and direct staff to publish a summary of the ordinance. Okay, that's my motion. I'd like a second and one other thing.
Thank you.
If there's a second.
Is there a second before we continue with the discussion? Second on Supervisor Callaway's motion.
If I may.
Please.
There's been a lot of things brought up in the many weeks we've been working on this issue. In fact, months. We started at the beginning of this year. So I've written something here to address on some of these issues that have been brought up from both sides. I have a daughter, and she isn't going to smoke marijuana or cigarettes or anything else while I have anything to say about it. She's also not going to drink or eat too much sugar. I have my way. She won't even start dating until she's 30. But I know that there will come a time when she will be on her own and will be free to make her own choices. That's the way it works. This is America. We value individual liberty and personal responsibility. Within the law, adult Americans are free to make their own choices about what they do, no matter what their mother or father may want. I promise to have an open mind on this subject, and let me tell you, I still do. But I'm going to vote on these regulations soon. However, let me be clear, I'm ready to vote another way if I see that these regulations are not working in the best interests of Calaveras County. When I ran for this office, I knew this day would come. Here's what I said on my campaign website. I will approach this subject with an open mind. Regarding re-regulating commercial marijuana, like any economic development project, I'll ask the same questions. Are the proposed regulations well planned? Do they conform to the general plan? Are they market driven? Do they benefit the county budget? Will they make our lives better? As your supervisor, it would be my duty to my constituents and the residents of Calaveras County to know the facts and make an informed decision. It is also my duty to share the facts with the people so that they too are informed and understand the reasons for my vote. Being an elected official is not about my personal agenda or personal feelings. We need to move forward beyond this issue. It has divided our community and even our families long enough. These regulations are the result of a long process. Between the Planning Commission and the board, I believe we'll have had well over 25 hours of deliberation, edits, modifications, public comments, and other input for the most part. Everyone working to craft regulations that will work. I appreciate that. The one thing we all agree on, the one thing I bet nobody in this room would deny, is that illegal marijuana grows are a blight on Calaveras County. Environmentally, socially, you name it. It is a fact that it is the illegal grows that cause the most of the problems. Everyone involved in this process, both sides, benefits from the eradication of illegal grows. Just as important, these regulations are designed to make sure the legal grows are conducted in a safe and environmentally responsible way. Let's be honest. Nobody can tell you for sure that these regulations are going to work, that overall Calaveras will benefit from regulations. But I'm voting for these regulations possibly because I believe that what we're doing now definitely isn't working. I believe these regulations are the only proactive policy course that can provide the resources we need to win the battle against illegal grows. So I'm voting to try another approach to dealing with the problem. But let me repeat again, I will be watching the process and the results. I will be proactive in suggesting any changes to regulations that need to be made to make Calaveras County a better place. Let's be honest about something else. Yes, of course, the additional revenue the county hopes to receive under these regulations and Measure C is an important factor in my decision. Of course it is. If the county wasn't going to benefit, why do it? Finding additional revenue to support county services, and that includes public safety. Without levying additional taxes on all property owners or every consumer in Calaveras County, without levying additional taxes on all property owners or every consumer in Calaveras County is a good thing, a very good thing, and there shouldn't be any embarrassment about it being a worthy goal. But money isn't the overriding concern for me. Let's talk about public safety. I sympathize with the sheriff. He's been asked to give us predictions about the number of illegal grows we can expect under regulations, the prospective crime rate, and whether Calaveras County will be safer. Not as safe or just about as safe, with regulations or without regulations over a given time frame. We have a good sheriff. I'm a fan of the sheriff, but even he isn't psychic. He had given us his honest thoughts and opinions about what we can expect under these regulations, and I appreciate that. I wouldn't have it any other way. So let me say this. If under these regulations, the sheriff thinks he needs more resources to keep Calaveras County safe as can be, he can count on my vote. Another objection to adopting these regulations has to do with CEQA and whether the EIR and the addendum is legal. I served on the Planning Commission, but I'm not a lawyer. However, the county council is a lawyer and is in charge of several more lawyers, and they say it's legal. I understand other lawyers say it's not legal, but I cannot let some letter from some lawyer paid for by one side of an issue overrule the opinion of county council on my vote. We also hear that 53% of the voters are against commercial marijuana. That was the no vote on Measure D in 2016. This isn't Measure D. Unless we forget, the companion tax Measure C passed with 67% of the vote. Nobody can really say how these regulations would fare in an election, but I do know that I was given the trust of 64% of my district last year, and I tend to live up to that trust. Finally, in closing, I have heard it said by some who are opposed to these regulations that marijuana is different. Everything is different from everything else, of course, but that's not what is meant. Marijuana is just somehow different. Sometimes marijuana is different because developing brains are harmed by smoking marijuana, and this could well be true. I believe it to be true. I don't mean to minimize this danger one bit. When I say that developing brains should not also drink alcohol, smoke cigarettes, take opiates, or engage in sports where there's an enhanced risk of concussion. We need to protect our children as parents and as a community. These regulations and other regulations are written to keep these threats away from them. It is against the law to provide alcohol or cigarettes to minors. And under these regulations, it will still be against the law to provide marijuana to them also. When you take a good look at it, marijuana is only different because the black market still exists. Al Segal is right. When you take a look at it, the reason why marijuana is different is all about black market economics. Black market economics works like this. 1, prices are high because it's illegal. 2, high prices incentivize illegal behavior. So we see that to justify keeping marijuana illegal because it's associated with crime is circular thinking. As Al Segal reminded us in his letter to the Enterprise, America had a direct experience with this circular thinking 100 years ago during Prohibition. The government made alcoholic beverages illegal, and criminality and violent crime went up fast. After Prohibition was repealed, violent crime went down. America was safer after Prohibition was repealed. As I read Proposition 64, what came through to me is how the legalization is trying to do the same thing. Break the negative feedback loop that prohibition of marijuana has created. We are all working to make our county a better place to live, and these regulations are a step in that direction. With that, I will second the motion.
Thank you. If somebody could help the lady with the turning off, putting it on stun. Ms. Miller, can you square that away? So you got it? Okay. I have a motion and a second. Other statements from the board? Supervisor Mills?
I'll tell you, when I was in business, everybody owned a phone. Everybody who had a phone, it was a company phone, and I had a fishbowl with water for those people who had that happen. So it's interesting, and I go back to our conversations with Tabitha, and she said to go slow. I don't see that 190 applicants is going slow. This is basically being fast-tracked ahead and against the board's priority in January when we established what we were going to do first. Why that was important to talk about the general plan is because that is a foundational element for the CEQA work that's been done, which means that we've got a general plan that's already been admitted to being inadequate. Why do I say that? I can quote from March 8th of 2013, the existing general plan widely panned as outdated, inadequate, and legally indefensible per Sean Jansen in the Union Democrat. He was talking about the 1996 plan. There's an article in December of 2007. There are a number of cases where courts have held that public agencies are prohibited from approving projects that implicate inadequacies in an agency's general plan. Ellis and Folk, by the way, isn't he part of that Schulte Weinberger group? Okay. Tom Impacino in 2006, speaking about the 96 general plan. I was asked to explain to the board the legal jeopardy posed by the county's currently inadequate plan. It turns out that I do not need to address that issue since the inadequacy of the current plan is among the worst kept secrets in Calaveras County. In the written materials I'm submitting, I point out some of the most obvious flaws in the plan. There's no need to belabor those issues today. December 16, 2012, we were cited as an example of what not to do in state literature on general plans. This is per somebody by the name of Willis, for those of you who remember. In fact, there was one time where Planning Commissioner Michelle Plotnick said, there's no way I can see we can approve this project under the current general plan. These statements are from 2006, 2007, and 2013, all claiming the inadequacy of the 96 plan that brought about the building moratorium of 2007. Doing that moratorium was an open admission the 96 plan was inadequate as of 2007. But that plan is being used today to support a CEQA finding in 1795 and is being used as a foundation for that CEQA leads no other conclusion but the CEQA is inadequate as well. I make those statements because when I start looking around at what other land use that you could talk about where there is no ability of the neighboring properties to express their opinion about that issue or to mitigate that issue, and you could ultimately affect that neighbor's property value, could come down to, in essence, the government's taking of a portion of the value of your property by making this decision. Now, I'm going to go back, as I've referred to Sonoma County before. I have all of the Sonoma County documents right here. They're very extensive. And they're not letting the state decide what is going to be in the best interest of the grow operations in their area. And believe me, they do grow there. One of the things I found rather interesting was a deed and agreement by and between the grantor and the County of Sonoma conveying a well monitoring easement. Why do they do that? Because they say in their documents, water supply on-site provided by municipal surface or well water within Zone 4, there should be no net increase in water use. Zone 4 on their map is almost half of their county. In other words, you can't intensify an agricultural use within a low or no water production area. And they're very clear about they want not only that groundwater easement, they give you the instructions, and those instructions are very detailed. I was amazed how well they put that together. We're not even close. They have what's called a cannabis strip generation form that's required. They're requiring, on the back side here, following employees must be 21 years old, do background searches. They're requiring local hiring preference for business. We seem to talk about that with the exception of this operation. Compliance with wage and hour laws. You actually have to report back to the county that you are truly filing a 1099. Required adherence to building code and grading ordinances, property setbacks, which is quite interesting. Biotic assessment required. Cultivation not located on slopes greater than 15%. No tree removal. Protection of prime farmlands. You cannot convert existing agricultural land. Culture and historic resource protection. Vegetation and fencing required. Site security plan required. Odor filtration systems required for indoor and mixed light. All lighting shall be fully contained and not visible from neighboring properties. Stormwater management plan and erosion sediment and control plan required. Fire prevention plan required. Waste management plan required. Remember I said before, even in Colorado, they got it figured out that you need to mix what you have as waste product 50% with other inert ingredients in order to get rid of it. And in Colorado, you have to log that on the state's website with who it was that got rid of it and where it went. We're not even close. Wastewater discharge management plant required. Renewable energy requirements must be 100% renewable. Generators are prohibited.
Easy.
I'm just going to, to say that we have done our best to craft an ordinance, and knowing full well what Sonoma County has put together, I'm really questioning the validity of the effort here. When you start thinking about the impacts to neighbors, and this has always been one of my big bugaboos, is how are the neighbors going to be impacted and how are we going to be able to mitigate those impacts? When you have low water and you have a higher intensity of use, and I'll give you an example of some illegal operations that were recently eradicated on Fullen Road, there was a lady up there was considering shutting down her business because she couldn't get enough water. Guess what? Her water's back. Is doing pump testing going to solve that? I'm not so sure. I'll tell you why. Because Blue Lake Springs Water for over 25 years attempted to drill duster wells to supply that area with water, and only a recent agreement with CCWD has solved their problem. Knowing that wells can go dry and remain dry indefinitely is one of those ifs that happen in fractured rock situations. People keep referring to the grapes that grow here in Calaveras County, but you forget grapes grow in all climate zones in the world and in all water zones in the world. We cannot even begin to draw that comparison. But my biggest concern is, should we think about co-location and beginning to compact these sites into a very small area? What is the cumulative effect? And I don't think that the EIR has addressed that enough, or that we can really understand it well enough. I think, we can talk about the medical, everybody keeps bringing up the medical issues back and forth, but until I hear that you got a doctor next to your name, a doctor of medicine, I'm really thinking it's quite speculation, and that the federal government has really done very little research on the whole issue. Remember, we turned down hemp in this county, didn't we? You know, in Wisconsin, they're growing hemp commercially, and they're doing it successfully. But there's one thing that they require. Before that harvest happens, the state comes in and they test to ensure it's no greater than 3% THC. If it is, the entire product is seized by the state. What kind of guarantees have we got right here to protect our environment and our children and our water? My answer is right now, this is inadequate. I would have wished that the staff and those board members that worked so hard on this would have tried to find a compromise. You and the sir in the orange hat, I agree with you, that there is ways to find compromise. But we're right now, I think, hell-bent on creating something, good, bad, or ugly, and I can't go along with it the way it is. I just can't.
Thank you. Any final statements before we move towards a vote? Supervisor Toffenelli?
Yeah, I have, I'm not going to go into, I don't have anything written down, pages of stuff to say. I'm basically where I was back in January 2018 and some of the regulations that were being proposed back then. I'm against the 10 acres. I would like to see that and ask this board to please remove the 10 acres. I'm against the 20 acres, even against the 20 acres. I think it's too small. I think in my district we're going to have nothing but continuing problems with the odor. It's kind of strange to me that Supervisor Callaway would be behind a dark sky ordinance and a noise ordinance and a vote for something when we know it's even in the EIR that the odor is a problem, that we would just go 150 feet away. That's like saying, gee, I'm sure happy that fire was only 150 feet away from my property, or I wouldn't have smelled any of that smoke. It's going to happen. And it's smaller 20 acres where it's going to be, and even down to 10 acres when it's abuts an RR zone, is absolutely, it's crazy. It's going to cause problems. I experienced the problems when I came on this board and the urgency ordinance was going on. It was nonstop phone calls and emails about problems. And I don't think any of those problems has been addressed in any of this. I think the EIR is inadequate. It talks about 190 maximum acres of growth. You've opened it up to nurseries. You've opened it up to 6 outdoor plants to anybody. That increases the canopy size regardless of what it says of 190 acres. That, to me, is a problem with the EIR, along with a couple other things. I also would like to ask County Council, because I've heard a couple of members on this board say that if something happens in the future, they would look at coming back to this ordinance, or any future boards coming back to this ordinance and doing away with it. Once this is passed today, this being a land ordinance, whoever gets their permit is now grandfathered in. Is that correct? You cannot excommunicate them from any future ordinances. You can't go back and say, no, we don't want to do this now, everybody go away. You granted them a permit, and you've granted them a grandfathered in this ordinance to continue. Is that not correct?
When the board adopts a permanent ordinance, a permanent regulatory ordinance, and there is a permit, obviously the permit would need to be renewed annually. If the board were to change course and look to modify any permanent ordinance, we would in fact need to include what is the term? Thank you, amortization language within that ordinance for purposes of essentially allowing the people that were allowed under this permanent ordinance to continue to operate for a certain set specific amount of time. I've seen some amortization of 5-year period. That's what is used quite frequently for amortizing an entitlement or other use out. Supervisor Toffanelli, do you feel that that didn't answer your question properly or adequately?
No, I think it serves its purpose of what you're saying. It's just, if another board comes in here, another member, there's an election coming up, there's 3 decide to do away with this ordinance, it's just not a cut and dried situation. It's not, there's a ban tomorrow and stop. That's not going to happen. What's being allowed here is basically some grandfathering in. And if that board decides to say, okay, we're not going to go forward with any more permits, but we'll let those stay, then it stays. And that's the way it is. You're not going to cut and dry tomorrow if another board comes in or somebody here is saying they're watching it and they don't like what's going on, we're going to come in and change my vote. It's not that easy.
That's correct. It would be, they would be allowed to continue for the time period of any amortization allowed in any future ordinance.
Thank you. The other problem I have with this ordinance is, and I don't know of any other ordinances, I go to the very bottom of this ordinance and 3 supervisors voted in and I go to SS on page 51, some findings by a supervisor. There's no basis for those, what this is in here for. To me, I can't understand why we would even want something like this in there. It has nothing to do with this ordinance. It's a personal opinion on illegal grows. And it's not conducive of exactly everything that happened between the urgency ordinance when it was going on and we were trying to permit, and where our focuses were as a county on the sheriff's office, having to send somebody out there with code compliance to do any inspections. Code compliance and all those officers that were elected, all the code compliance officers that were hired at that time specifically for the urgency ordinance, that's what their job was to do, was specifically go out and verify so we could get through the permitting process, which we talk about 190 right now. There was 700 and something of them. We only got through 190 over a long period of time because it's not that simple to get through. And I think one of the growers pointed out when he held up what the flow chart was to get one. It's going to be a long time. I truly feel that 190 starting out is going to overwhelm again the county. And those code compliance officers, after the urgency order, when we had the ban voted in, stopped that compliance part of it and trying to get the permits through and focused on calls that they had for illegal growth. So that's going to go up because it's all illegal after that. So certainly those numbers are going to go up. The sheriff's office didn't have to focus on having to send sheriff's officers out for permits. You could now focus on complaints or getting warrants to go out and eradicate illegal grows that were all illegal. So yes, and when they're all illegal, those numbers are going to go up, and they did go up. So I cannot understand why something like this, and I urge the board to please take this out. I also urge the board to please take the 10 acres out. I don't think it's going to be right. I think we're going to have a bunch of problems with that, CPU or not, or CUP or not. It doesn't make sense when you talk about really tight regulations with these type of things in there. It just doesn't. I can't vote for this the way it's written.
Thank you. Before I call the vote, I too have a statement I'd like to read. I'd like to start by thanking the staff of Calaveras County, especially the people who are up here today. You have been dragged up and down the stairs. You guys have worked incredibly hard, showing a very high level of professionalism Even when you've got a diverse and different opinion board, you've been able to handle this. And I respect greatly what you've done in 25 years of public service. I don't know if I've got the chance to work with such a fine group of people. Thank you. Today, we're going to vote on a cannabis regulation for our county. I want to make the point that this has not been rushed nor haphazard process in reaching this point. Since 2015, Calaveras has struggled with how to approach this industry. The green rush of 2016 was quickly followed by the urgency ordinance, which attempted to control the unregulated growth of the industry here in Calaveras. While the UO was abandoned in January 2018, we learned a great deal from that process. Since January 2019, we have worked diligently to incorporate the lessons of the urgency ordinance and the evolving state regulations, as well as the experience of other counties that they've gone through in order to come up with a thoughtful program. We have learned a great deal. We have held many public hearings and come up with a thoughtful plan. This plan restricts the total amount of cannabis to a fifth of the number applied to under the urgency ordinance. The plan protects sensitive environmental sites and provides that farms will not exist in residential neighborhoods. This plan can provide between 1,000 and 2,000 direct jobs in Calaveras County. Let's recognize that at the high water mark, our fabled cement plant employs just over 600. This regulation makes our community safer and more prosperous. All employers and employees will be required to pass background checks in order to be compliant, and any violation of this could result in a loss of their business and subsequently all their investment. This plan also provides needed funding for the county's services and safety. Even under the ban, and this board spending almost $1 million a year in associated MEC funding for the sheriff, the ban did not stop illegal growing of cannabis in Calaveras County. Simply put, the ban did not work. It allowed black market illegal grows to flourish and kept tax-paying and registered cannabis growers out. With taxes from legal cannabis, we can adequately fund the sheriff and stomp out illegal grows and stop the environmental damage that they cause. Let's be clear, this is a limited program in restricted areas. The program, when built out, will provide considerable revenue to the county. Some estimates based upon CDFA and other counties can predict revenues in excess of $1 million a year, $11 million a year to this county. Cannabis is a legal industry in California, and we as a county are a legal subdivision of the state of California. People can assign morality to this product on one side or the other, but I believe this is a legal product and legal business, and I believe that increasing businesses and jobs are a good thing for my county. Thus, I will support this program. We have a motion, we have a second. Madam Clerk, we do a roll call vote.
Supervisor Toffenelli?
No.
Supervisor Garamendi?
Chair votes last. Yes.
It's district order.
Yes.
Supervisor Callaway?
Yes.
Supervisor Mills?
No.
And Supervisor Stopper?
Yes.
So you have a 3-2 affirmative vote.
Thank you. And with that, we are closing the public hearing. We will return from lunch at 1 o'clock.